Mario. You know him, I know him, he's been around for a while and has been the star of his own games for a long time now. You could say that he's been around the block a couple times. The red Italian narcissist oversized plumber has taken the spotlight for so long now that sometimes we forget about the other characters in the franchise that don't get nearly as much praise. Toad, Waluigi, Wario, Peach. That other princess, I forget her name. Daisy! You get the picture. They don't get nearly as much showtime or praise as Mario does. Not even his brother gets it. It only took Nintendo almost 2 decades before they finally thought about giving someone else their own game and not have Mario be the main protagonist. And so, Luigi's Mansion was created and released alongside the GameCube back in 2001. It got generally positive reviews at the time, but over the years of Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon and the more recent Luigi's Mansion 3 being released, it feels like the original gets overlooked more and more, and is seen almost like a beta version, as the black sheep of the series for its more dark and creepy tone. But I can assure you, the original Luigi's Mansion is without a doubt one of my favourite titles in the franchise. None of the others even come close. So as you might have guessed, this is what we're going to be talking about today. Why Luigi's Mansion is so criminally underrated for what it is. So the game starts off pretty simply. Luigi wins a mansion in the middle of nowhere from a contest that he never even entered in. It has a pretty nice landscape surrounded by crows, dead trees, and a pretty cheery atmosphere if you ask me. So after entering and exploring a small part of the mansion, we run into some ghosts and someone named Professor Egad, who I can't tell if he's an old man or a newly born baby. I mean, look at him. He's wearing glasses, so that's a check for the old man. He has one too, so that's a check for the newly born baby. He has a rather large sperm stuck on his head, so that's a check. Wait, what? The old man baby tells us about this mansion and how there have been an increasing amount of ghosts that have been appearing inside of it recently. He asks us why we are here in the first place, and we reluctantly tell him about how we mysteriously won it in a contest that we never even entered in, despite feeling foolish enough to fall for this in the first place. You see, this is why they don't make games about you, Luigi, because you're an idiot! The professor then recalls seeing a red hat fellow walk in the mansion and says that he probably didn't stand a chance against those ghosts on his own. So the professor then gives us his poltergust for us to suck and blow on ghosts to stand a chance to defeat them. Wait, this is a kid's game, right?
Oh yeah.
The control scheme for this title might feel a bit odd and unfamiliar for newer players, but I assure you it doesn't take too long to wrap your head around it. You'll be moving Luigi with the left analog stick and using the C stick to move around your flashlight and vacuum. When you encounter a ghost, you'll need to point your flashlight at it to expose their heart for a brief second. In this moment, you'll need to start sucking by holding down the R button, which will make you start fighting them essentially. When you're in this mode, you'll need to pull back on the analog stick in the opposite direction you're getting pulled to deal damage to the ghost. It is entirely possible to suck more than one ghost at the same time. You'll need to accurately point your flashlight at 2 or more ghosts to expose their hearts at the same time before sucking them both. It may feel a little odd at first to move around in particular if you're a newer player, even I had to get back to grips with how the controls worked, but you'll quickly figure it out. This is by far one of the most satisfying games I've played and it still holds up today. It's fun and addictive to capture ghosts just because the controls feel so goddamn good once you get your head around them. There's this sense of weight to each of the ghosts, with some of them being lighter or heavier than others. It's immensely satisfying and doesn't get old, despite the fights never feeling like they evolve all that much or get much more challenging. It's satisfying, okay? Conclusion: game is satisfying. You can just stop watching the video now. After our training, we part ways with Professor Seaman and enter the mansion once more, only this time we're armed with the power to suck. Upon entering, you'll find that you have a small section of the mansion that you can explore. There are 4 areas like this throughout the entire game, and you'll be able to access new areas once you've defeated the boss of the current area that you're in. So returning back to the first room that we visited, we take care of those pesky ghosts and get rewarded with a key. This is your main way of progressing, allowing you to unlock new rooms and explore deeper into the mansion. However, you'll soon realise that even though the area you're exploring is open to a certain extent, the keys will guide you on a rather linear path, but that doesn't take away from the game's overall performance and enjoyment. Obviously in a haunted mansion, you'll be fighting a lot of ghosts, that's kind of a given, but there are a few different types that don't exactly change the way that you fight, but make you more aware of your surroundings. From throwing bananas on the ground to doing AoE attacks to hugging you. I think this might be borderline rape, Luigi, you might want some therapy after this. There's enough variation in the ghosts to keep them interesting throughout the entire game. There are also ghosts that are elemental, however the only difference is you have to blow the correct element onto them to make their heart vulnerable before you attack them. Kinda disappointing if you ask me. Yeah, that was a good one. I'm getting bored of these jokes now. Sometimes the game will be clever and use specific rooms to make fighting ghosts a bit more challenging and interesting. For example, in this room, you have to use the shadow of the projector to figure out where the ghosts are in the room. These rooms are far and few between, and the gimmick only gets used in that room, but it's still nice to break up the usual fights. After completing Area 1 and having to snoop around Area 2 a little, you'll come to a standstill at this specific room. After defeating all the ghosts, you won't be presented with the usual chest with the key inside. Instead, you have to press this button, which the camera doesn't allow you to see, but is cleverly reflected into the mirror. This is the classic clever Nintendo puzzle thing that you're used to in like Zelda and stuff. So after pressing the button, and then pressing the other button that totally wasn't covered over with a warning poster or whatever, shut up, we release all the boos and they immediately scram after seeing that we have the poltergust. We then go back to Professor Gadd and he gives us a new tool, the Boo Radar. Boos are probably one of the most annoying enemies in the game. Not necessarily early on, but in the mid to late game, they become a fucking nuisance. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. The way that boos occur are quite different from the regular ghosts that we've been fighting up to this point. We need to light the room first, and then search for the boo in the furniture since they like to hide. Once we've hunted it down, it will then expose itself with a terrible pun before trying to escape. They can also go through walls and enter into other rooms, so it's only a matter of time until they enter a room that you can't even access yet. Okay, now I'm pissed off. Capturing boos is a necessity, as you'll need at least 40 to unlock the pathway to the final boss, and for some reason they're easier to suck in rooms that are lit rather than dark ones. Also, after capturing your first 5 boos, the professor calls you and says this. Okay, now I'm getting suspicious. Progressing to Area 3, we find that Mara is being held captive by King Boo, and so now we have a goal to work towards instead of roaming around the mansion helplessly. Speaking of King Boo, there are a surprising amount of bosses to go up against. Bosses are the source of the game's creativity that it thrives from, using clever puzzles and interesting mechanics to make their hearts vulnerable before you can attack. There's a surprising amount of mini-bosses, some of which are optional, and they all have unique ways of making their heart vulnerable. There's a lot of personality and creativity with each boss, both how to defeat them and what they use to attack you, suiting the room that you're fighting them in and who they are. For example, the twins use an aeroplane and car to attack you, the musician plays a melody before attacking you with music sheets, the old man gets tired, and so on.
Okay, boomer.
It's very obvious that each boss was thought about and not just given random things to attack you with. They aren't much of a challenge though, and they don't take very long to figure out either. But you are rewarded with different sizes of pearls if you can suck them in 1 or 2 goes, as well as a rank when you turn them back into paintings at the professor's lab. Mini bosses are fine for what they are, and definitely show a lot of quality. However, main bosses, as you might imagine, are more fleshed out and show more potential. The fights are taken to a bigger scale, making Luigi feel puny against what was originally a normal sized ghost that could have easily been taken care of. Similar to mini bosses, main bosses are pretty easy to defeat, but sometimes lead more towards the more aggravating side of things. Especially this boss. This boss right here can go get sucked by someone else for all I care. It might seem easy. Bait the big boo into the spike, he goes pop, loads of boos come out, and now all we have to do is freeze and capture them. But when it gets down to a 1 or 2 left, it feels almost impossible to bait them to get near you so you can freeze and capture them. But apart from him, the rest of them are decent, my favourite one being the baby. I love how they turn the tides on you and make you feel like the small one with the baby towering over you. It's probably caught your attention that there's money to be collected throughout the game as well. That's because there is money, gems and gold bars hidden everywhere around the mansion, and several secret areas that hold so much more. But wait, that's not all. You might even encounter a fast blue ghost that doesn't attack you but runs away. These are called speedy spirits. You only get one shot at sucking them up, otherwise they're gone. If you light up the room, you've also lost your chance at capturing it. They reward you with a bunch of money and maybe even a gem or a gold bar. Similar to speedy spirits, you can also find cheese hidden around the mansion in areas that your normal camera can't see. You'll have to use the Game Boy Horror to get into camera mode and scan the cheese for a golden mouse to spawn. Why isn't it working? Unlike speedy spirits, you practically get an infinite amount of tries to catch it as long as the room is dark. All you have to do is go in and out of the room to try and catch it again. There's also a chance for a golden mouse to spawn in a hallway too. You might realise that I don't have much footage of golden mice or speedy spirits. Wanna know why? Besides completely forgetting that they exist until I started editing this video. Well, as intriguing as all this might sound, there isn't really any reason or incentive to collect it besides the general hype of finding more. Your reward is a painting of your newly made house replacing the mansion that you explored, and the more money you collected, the better the house will look. That's it. What, you're expecting more? I really feel like this was a missed opportunity. Even something as simple as upgrades for your poltergeist or some passive ability for Luigi would have made me care more to find more money. Overall, rather disappointing and overlooked mechanic in my opinion. The original Luigi's Mansion hasn't aged too badly, but at the same time, there are moments where you can see the crusty and blurry textures. The sprites for the enemies in Luigi are fine for what they are, but you have to remember that this was the first game to release on the GameCube, so back then it must have been groundbreaking. I suppose for today's standards that it's tolerable, but personally I don't really mind these older styled graphics. There's a certain unique look and feel to everything that I really enjoyed. Some of you might be wondering, when is he going to mention the 3DS version? Well, to you I say, don't ever speak to me again. One last thing to mention is the soundtrack. There isn't much variation if I'm being honest, but then again, this game only lasts around 5 hours. Though I do really enjoy how they change the music used in different areas and how it cleverly uses the same melody but changes the mood of the soundtrack itself. For example, in dark rooms, Luigi hums the soundtrack to himself nervously. When he's in a dark hallway, he hums along with the soundtrack in the background. And when he's in a lit room, the soundtrack is the same, but sounds a lot more chilled and laid back. So that's Luigi's Mansion, an extremely satisfying and interesting title that I feel is so underrated and overlooked by a lot of people. I guess the third title in the franchise was the one to hit mainstream appeal, which explains why a lot of people don't bother with the original. I mean, the original is different for sure, but in a good way, in a more mature and atmospheric way that you'd expect a haunted mansion to be and feel like. The other games in the series, even though aren't necessarily bad games, focus more on being light-hearted and funny, which is completely fine. It definitely feels like yin and yang when comparing the original with either of the other titles, but I'd still suggest to give this a shot nonetheless. If you own a GameCube, then you can pick it up cheap on eBay, but if you don't, then you can use a modified GameCube like I did. Now, if you'll excuse me, I just got an email about winning some contest I didn't even enter in. Oh wait.